Mankind did not want a good Christ that healed. Mankind wanted a good Christ that conquered. This is the fundamental block in humanity. I begin to enter into the block and become what it is. I'm becoming fear, judgment, self-loathing, violence, rape, war, pride, jealousy. I'm just becoming all of it, and I'm so angry. Every speck of fear that I could see was like a living entity looking right back at me. The scale is absolutely unfathomable. Oh my God. I'm so sorry.
When we act out that fear and that pain, we end up collectively with things like war and abuse.
If we see a school shooting, if we see a mass murder of any kind, it didn't just start there. That's the expression of a momentum.
Were you shown what the cause of this block was?
Yes, I have been shown this.
Do you think that we will be able to rise to this challenge and heal? I'm here today with Mary Reid, who has had a lifetime of spiritually transformative and mystical experiences. She is now a mystic wisdom guide, a channeler. Mary, thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Melissa. I'm thrilled to be here.
Likewise. So let's start off of your bio there, where you began venturing uncontrollably into mystical experiences. What was that like for you?
Well, it just catapulted me out of what I thought I was and life was and all of this sort of stuff, because I thought I was quite normal in my little executive life. And in the summer of 2000, I started hearing a voice, and the voice said that I was supposed to be doing something very important, which I already thought I was. I was doing research in respiratory medicine and AIDS at the time. So I tried to ignore the voice. I had never had anything like that. I didn't think big questions about life. I was just very much in my sort of own little world. And this voice just kept coming and coming and coming, always saying the exact same thing. You're supposed to be doing something very important. So after 6 months of that relentless voice, I finally went to get help to figure out what is this? What's happening here? And I went to a psychotherapist friend in Arkansas, and she started to put me under a little bit of hypnosis with the question of, so what is this, thing that she's supposed to be doing or has forgotten about or whatever? And much to my great surprise, in that session, I went into immediately the body and being of Jesus on the cross at the moment of crucifixion. And remember, I was agnostic at the time. When I realized where and in whom I was, suddenly I just knew everything about human evolution. I just, in an instant, got the understanding of how we have evolved. And it's impossible to talk about all the little nuances of everything. It was just this instant download. And in particular, I watched what caused the crucifixion. And it wasn't what my grandmother told me, which was betrayal by a disciple and some people in power who felt threatened by Jesus. In my experience, what I saw cause the crucifixion was the momentum of a mindset. And it was a mindset of fear and conflict that had just taken ages to cultivate and perpetuate and deeply entrench. And I watched that mindset and that momentum come to a head in the crucifixion and then just continue on in different ways. And in that experience, as I'm in the body and being of Jesus, I literally have his death experience, just like you hear in near-death experiences, like the death and then a spirit pulled out of the body. In my case, it felt like it was just sucked out of the chest, and then it was hovering above the crowd that had gathered at the crucifixion. And now, in an instant, I can just be the emotions of every single person present. I know exactly what's inside of every single person, who's filled with rage and anger and regret and shock and grief and all of these sorts of things. And the vibrations of guilt and grief were really powerful. And in addition to this, I can see in all of these people and before those people and stretching all into humans today, I could see this thread of sorrow that was connecting every single human ever. And the source of that sorrow was our deeply held belief that we're separate from this thing that we call God, this thing that we call divine love, that we believe we're separate from our source. And that's the source of that sorrow that we all carry in the human experience. In this experience, when the body and being of Jesus dies, I watch the evolution of Christianity then from that point forward to current day. And I watch all the kings and cardinals and bishops scrambling to carve out dominions in Christ's name, century after century. And I watch death and destruction, and most of all, domination again and again. Now, of course, there was a lot of goodness that was in the evolution of Christianity and still is, but it was the way that the goodness was being used that was my lesson. And that was that mankind as a whole did not want a good Christ that healed. Mankind wanted a good Christ that conquered. And that was my lesson, this conquering mentality, which is, of course, part of that fear and conflict ideology that you have to conquer all of the immoral evil. So that was my very first experience. This is how I started. I just leapt out of agnostic life in this sort of bubble over here and into this wild, wild, completely different understanding and view of life. And then I had to go back to work into my office and just, my high rise in Washington, D.C., and kind of just be normal. And this part starts feeding into why I understand about the need for integration, because the confusion then probably started. And we can talk about that in a little bit. But ultimately, it took me 10 years and a hell of a lot of confusion to finally just surrender the need to try to understand what in the hell was going on with me. But 16 years after that experience, and I began to have those experiences, then all of these big metaphysical experiences just spontaneously coming into or going out of sleep, just as I'm walking around the house in meditation, etc. I began to just again and again and again have big metaphysical experiences in the mind of Buddha. Like they're all very big, and they all seem to go continually to the origins of things that we think are pertinent to understanding human experience. So 16 years after that initial experience, I had another experience that really brought home this idea of what that conquering mentality looks like in humanity and how it has contributed to us being stuck in a cycle that we can't get out of. This is why awakening is so arduous and so hard, is because we're coming out of something that's deeply unseen and entrenched in humanity. So now I'm going to try to tell this experience without any notes. Normally I have to have notes because I've had so many experiences and I get like, wait a minute, I forgot this detail or that detail. So I apologize to the viewers in advance if I screw this up, but we're going to go with it. And so ultimately, 10 years after the experiences, I ended up in a Buddhist nunnery in the Himalayas, and I spent several years there, and that's a whole other story. That's the subject of my first book. But in that Buddhist nunnery, I would leave during monsoon season, and I would go on tour to talk about my experiences. Like in the summertime, I would go to Europe and America, and I would just talk about my experiences. And in the winter of 2015 to 16, I was in the nunnery and I was thinking about my work and what I would be able to like tell people in the next tour season and just basically how could I be most helpful. And in that, thinking about that, I could feel very distinctly like I was blocked. I was specifically blocked. It was like a life block. And there was like nothing at all coming around that block. So I tried and tried and tried and tried to get through that block, go around the block, etc. And then after several months of feeling like that, I suddenly realized that, oh, maybe that block is my work. Maybe that's what I'm supposed to be experiencing or talking about. So then I began to just sit with it, to hike with it in the mountains, to contemplate with it, again and again, just sort of feeling into what does this block have to teach me or to show me or to help me understand. And in April of 2016 at 3:30 in the morning, I'm focusing on this block. And as I'm really, really connecting to this,
Do you like what you're hearing on this podcast? For just $10 a month, you can join Love Car Life Academy, where you'll have access to our exclusive community chat and our weekly live streams, where we answer your most pressing questions and deep dive into your spiritual practice. You don't have to be alone on this journey. Come join us. We would love to have you.
I experience a being of light. This being of light comes, and it's this diffuse, really effusively loving, hysterically funny, just ball of light, and it's come to help me. And I say, "Can you help me with this feeling of being blocked?" And the light extends itself into my stomach, and it says, "It's here, unquestionably." And so I look inside my stomach and I can see what looks like a bowling ball, this dense, heavy, dark bowling ball kind of block. And at the same time, I'm experiencing in the cosmos, I'm feeling all of the cosmos, seeing and feeling all of the cosmos. And it's just love. It's love everywhere, flowing in all directions except one spot. One spot, this teeny tiny little spot through which no love is entering or exiting. So it's the same block in me, but I'm seeing it also in the cosmos. And I know immediately within me and within the cosmos, this is the fundamental block in humanity. Somehow I just know that that's it. So I ask of this block, what is your nature? And immediately I hear separation. And then right on the heels of that, I hear, oh, but I am more than that. I'm also the cry for union. So, this fundamental block in humanity and in all that is our deeply held belief that we're separate from our source and our constant crying out for union with that source. And so I'm like, whoa, all right. Okay. So, how do we get rid of the block? And then immediately, as I say those words, there's like this huge force field around the block. It looks exactly like a radiating force field, both protecting it and giving it life. So, what I felt and what I understood in that moment was the idea of rejection is the very thing that gives separation its power. Okay, I don't want to reject it. I just want to understand it. So, this is the kind of thing that always happens in my experience. I enter into the experience and become whatever the lesson is, like going into the body and being of Jesus on the cross. I am the experience itself. So, here we go. As I'm seeking now to understand this block, I begin to enter into the block and become what it is. And as this is happening, as I'm just uniting and becoming this fundamental block in humanity, I'm starting to get really upset, really angry. And what's happening in me is that I am becoming every single thing that we label bad in the good trumps bad paradigm of life. I'm becoming everything fear, judgment, self loathing, violence, rape, war, pride, jealousy. I'm just becoming all of it. And I'm so angry. And I start to say, yeah, we don't want to talk about this, do we? Everybody loves to talk about all that nice, lovey stuff, but nobody wants to talk about this. I have to talk about this. I'm so, so angry. So, as I'm holding and being all that we call bad in our world, I'm beginning to feel deeper what all of this is. And I become aware that every single bit of this is all just pain. It's the iterations of pain that we experience in our beliefs that we're separate, that we label all of these different things, but they're all just expressions of pain that we've labeled something. And as I'm holding the being of all of this pain, all of the pain of everything that we call bad, I begin to feel that every single bit of it is profoundly sad. And the reason it is profoundly sad is because we decided from the very beginning that pain is the thing to be rejected. Rejection is the very thing that gives separation its life. So now, as I'm holding all of this pain that's profoundly sad, everything that I think is love in me comes rushing forward to heal it. Kindness, compassion, concern, empathy, everything comes rushing forward, wanting to heal this. And I can't touch it. I can't get anywhere near it. And I'm starting to get upset. Like, I'm deeply, earnestly wanting to heal this pain, this sadness, and I can't touch it. And I start saying, why not? Why can't the love in me heal the pain of separation from love in me? Isn't that what I'm crying out for? Isn't it what this block is crying out for? And as I'm standing there, being there, just immersed in all of this pain and this confusion, that light returns. And the light says to me, why can't you answer that question? I don't know. I have no idea. And again, the light asks very quickly, why can't you answer the question? The light is not concerned with the answer to the question of why love can't make the pain of separation from love go away. It wants me to understand why I can't answer that question, and I have no idea. So as I'm standing there once again, just in this massive confusion, all of a sudden, all of the atoms and molecules in the cosmos, like every speck of the cosmos begins to fill in with light, divine presence. Everywhere, everywhere, everywhere. It's just all of this magnificent divine light. And it's all really serious. And I feel it's not words communicating, it's just this telepathic information. This is the work of the universe. There's this work, and all other work falls away. That's what all of the cosmos conveys to me. And then they show me that the dissolution of this block is an absorption process into the divine energies that are always here. And they show me the block like a soap bubble. And you can imagine if you just pierce the boundaries of the soap bubble, then poof, the essence of the emptiness that it contained is just absorbed into the divine energies around it. And all of this divine presence says the absorption process is their work, but the piercing process is mine. And then suddenly I can see my body like I'm watching it on a movie screen. And they take my body and they show me these very basic body movement exercises, really like one knee over the other. And they said, this is your piercing process, and it's going to take place over several days. Now, I've been at this for 24 years with all of these experiences. I've still never, ever, except that moment, had specific instructions. Here's your piercing process, and it's going to take place over several days. So, okay, I'm in the nunnery on my little twin bed, and I begin to do these little basic movements. And as I'm doing that, I begin to feel this really powerful current. It feels like an electric current. And it starts just off my body, and it starts rolling up and then back down. And then it gets bigger and rolling up and then back down. And again, it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And pretty soon it's the size of the universe. And when it gets to be the size of the universe, it begins to bring in ancient information into my awareness. And that information is, again, every single thing that we label bad in the good trumps bad paradigm of life. But this time, I'm watching us create them. I'm watching all of life unfold, and we're just labeling things good, bad, good, bad, good, bad. And with every single bad thing, I'm watching us use goodness like a weapon, taking this goodness like a weapon, trying to conquer that bad, trying to make that bad go away. Again and again and again and again. We just create more of these labels and the idea of trying to use one piece to make the other piece go away. Again and again and again. And as I'm watching us build our entire reality on this paradigm, everything fast forward to current day. And suddenly I can see so clearly that these are the energies. This is the paradigm that has paced the rhythms of our poetry. I literally watch it sweep ballet dancers very dramatically across the stage. I can hear it suddenly in the lyrics to our favorite songs. I can see it eloquently threaded through religious doctrine. I can see it in the conflict art of all of our stories and our movies. I can watch us build it, use it like foundations of building blocks, building the foundations of our economics, of our education, of our government, our religions, our cultural and societal systems, all built on this good trumps bad paradigm of life. And we know this because we all love the story of good trumps bad. It's the basic human hero's story, right? We love it when the good guy comes in and makes the bad go away. We love when karma comes around to bite the bad guy. We love the Disney model of life, right? But that model was not built on foundations of love. It was built on foundations of conflict and fear. That conflict and fear ideology that I watched in human evolution in the very first experience I ever had. So, as all of these pieces are coming together, and I'm seeing our reality, how our reality was built on that paradigm, I understand what happened. I understand how we got stuck. We have been stuck in this loop of self rejection because ultimately we're trying to make one part of us, whether it's individual or collective, that we label good, make another part of us that we label bad go away. And you'll notice that we can't. We just keep recycling this because of the paradigm that we're living in. As we use that good to try to make the bad go away, what we're doing is we are rejecting our cries for union with love because every single speck of what we call bad is our cry for union with love. That's the language of that cry is pain. And we're expressing it in all of these different ways. And so every time that we cry out for love through something that we've labeled bad, and then we try to use love, good, to try to make that pain go away, it's not seeking rejection. It's asking for love. And we're not loving it. We're rejecting it. We're using the good only version of love. Try to make the pain go away, and we can't. So this is the cycle that we're stuck in. We can't figure out why we can't love our pain away. And the reason is it doesn't want to go away. It wants to be held in love. It is a part of us that we've been rejecting. So as I'm watching all of this, as I understand fully exactly everything, I know precisely what my real piercing process is. All of that body movement stuff was to get me to this understanding. I know in this moment that my work, my piercing process is to get my own being, my own field in direct alignment with God or with source or with truth, with divine love. That all that I am is to be a state of authentic love. So I literally say in that moment, whatever comes into or arises in my field, I will accept here as an equal. I will not judge. Whatever it is, Whatever comes into or arises in my field is free to be whatever it is as it is. I will not oppress or resist or reject. Whatever comes into or arises in my field will be allowed here as an equal part of all that I am, the oneness that I am. And the moment that I hit the mark, the moment that I was in direct alignment with my own truth, with source, everything starts coming around again. Again, all the things that we label bad. And the first thing up was fear. They came one at a time this time. And fear, when fear hit this divine field that I was, there was this huge explosion of fear, of every kind of fear imaginable. But this time, it was mine. It was everything that I've ever experienced with fear in my own lifetime, in my entire existence, and all the ways I've ever been entangled or interwoven in the collective consciousness of humanity forever. Every speck of fear. The scale is absolutely unfathomable. And then, underneath it, all the pain. All the pain that that fear represented in my life, my existence, and all the ways I had ever put and held that pain in the collective consciousness of humanity because of my relationship in trying to reject fear. And every speck of fear that I could see was like a living entity looking right back at me, knowing that I had rejected it. I was so stunned. I was so shocked. And I just kept saying, "Oh my God. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I just didn't understand. I didn't understand." And I was just sobbing and sobbing and sobbing. And then finally, I just got down to the point where all I could say was, "Please forgive me." That was to me, to the collective, and most of all to that pain. And the moment that I got down to that total surrender of, "I'm so sorry, please forgive me," all of that fear and all of that pain in my field and in the collective for which part I'm responsible just went poof. And then it was all just absorbed into the divine field, the divine energies that were right there. And immediately then, bam, a huge explosion of judgment. That was the next thing to come. That judgment hit this divine field, the exact same process in my life, my existence, all the ways that I had held that judgment in the collective of humanity, and then all the pain. And once again, the sobbing, "I'm so sorry. Please forgive me." Bam! Self-loathing. They just kept coming and coming and coming and coming. And sure enough, it took several days. It took day and night, this went on. And finally, when I got down to the point where all of this healing was as much as I could do in that moment in my life, I walked out of my room at the nunnery, and everywhere I went, in the villages, in the mountains, everywhere, I could see all of the aspects of self-rejection that people were walking around with. I could see it in their field, and I could also very, very clearly see and feel all of the crying out for union that they're all walking through life with, everywhere. And in that moment, everywhere I could see those, it looked like white flags. It was like everywhere I was just seeing white flags of surrender saying, "I'm ready. I'm ready for a life in healing." So that was the big experience that really brought the whole understanding to me about we have now an opportunity for a very different evolution of humanity, and that is one that is not rejecting any aspects of ourselves, but fully understanding that nothing in us wants to be held outside of love. Nothing in us wants to be held outside of love. Everything is seeking the remembrance of its true nature, which is love. So my work ever since then has been very focused on the inclusion, the compassionate inclusion of everything, including our pain.
Mary, thank you so much for sharing your experiences. I would like to ask you some questions about the piercing process. I think the big question that comes up for people with this topic and why it's so hard for us maybe to accept those aspects of ourselves is because we struggle to find the boundary between how do we accept those so-called bad or dark aspects of ourselves while still having appropriate boundaries for behavior in the world, because when we act out though that fear and that pain, we end up collectively with things like war and abuse. So how do we, practically speaking, accept those parts of ourselves?
Yeah, that's a great question. If we see war, it didn't just start in that moment. It's the expression of a momentum. If we see a school shooting, if we see a mass murder of any kind, it didn't just start there. That's the expression of a momentum. And remember, I said I watched the momentum of all of that conflict and fear ideology come to a head in the crucifixion and then continue on in different ways, right? So when we see any experience, either in ourselves or out in the world, we know that that's a moment, that there's an expression of something that started long ago. And so now, what is our contribution to where it goes from here? Let's take a mass shooting, for example. What is missing in the person who's doing that weaponizing that violence? Love. So what's most needed? What's most needed in the contribution to any kind of momentum from that point? What we've been doing is contributing to the conflict and fear and hatred and blame ideologies that created it as a response to it. Remember, in the Las Vegas shooting, I have a talk on my website called "What's My Contribution," and it was after that piece. After that, everybody, this happens after every school shooting, et cetera. Everybody wants to blame and hate and talk about mental health services and this wasn't right and this wasn't enough and whatever. And those are just more expressions of pain. They're contributing to a conflict ideology. So if we understand in any situation like that, what is absent is love, then our opportunity is to be a presence of love in whatever way we can access that most authentically within us. And so even if we say within, I so very much authentically want to be a presence of love and a continuation of love, a contribution of love to this painful experience. Even if I don't know what it looks like, that's my deepest desire. And so I yield to whatever that love can look like in my life, in my words, in my choices, my actions, or whatever in this moment. That's my intention. It's that simple. So what we haven't done is pick up love like a weapon and try to make something go away. We've just said, I want to be a presence of love, whatever that is. And so we don't have, our mind can't figure out what that is because our mind is the thing that's been holding the fear-based separation ideology. So we allow love from within to rise up, to help us in whatever words of prayer come or whatever assistance comes or whatever thoughts arise from that are not coming from that same ideology. So we're just remembering that what's my contribution to this now? That's a very helpful way to think about this. If we know that, once again, we can't just continue to deal with the symptoms. Healing has to take place at the origin of separation. In my own experience, in that good trumps bad, that piercing process, I had to go to the origin point within me to say, whatever comes in here, it's allowed to be here as it is. I will not judge or resist or reject. My intention was to be a presence of love for all, period. And it was the love itself then that did all of the healing. It was all of the love that brought in that which needed to be healed, the perspective and understanding of how to allow love itself to do that. Now, that's another thing that's been coming again and again in all of my my metaphysical experiences is that love itself knows exactly what to do. And we keep trying to use our fear-based mind to strategize about what to do. And our mind is exhausted from all this efforting, and then frustration and frustration and frustration because nothing's getting healed. And it's because the source of healing has to come from a different place. It has to come from something that is unitive. It has to come from the source of love itself. And that's our opportunity now.
Do you have any advice for somebody who may want to go through this process within themselves? What's the best way for people to initiate that and trigger all their stuff to come up so that they can love it?
Yeah, actually, that's the way that I do all of my work. One is to realize first to take responsibility for the opportunity to have a different way of dealing with all of this, to really accept that it has to be a different way than we keep trying to do in the old way, which is very mental. It's very psychological. It's very based on separation ideology, right? All the mind that created all of this mess keeps trying to be the thing that's getting us out of the mess, and we can't do that. So we have to come into more of an experiential thing, which is vibrational. It is the energy within. And so all of my work happens not so much in a narrative way of talking through everything or sorting out the details, but coming into a still, open, quiet state and allowing a deeper knowing and presence to, as it rises up, it's just pushing up all of that stuff to be aware of from the perspective of love. You see, so as we quiet the mind, as we stop being identified with the thoughts of all of this, and we come into the source of healing within us, that connection to our divine being, and we allow that awareness to become overt and conscious and present here. What it does is just push all the things to be aware of to the surface so we can see them from the divine perspective, not from the judgmental, the blaming, the self-worth, all of these kind of struggle filters that we look through, and to really see it from the inside out. So my guidance is for people to check out more opportunities for wisdom engagements. Not necessarily, which isn't to say that psychotherapy and things like that aren't helpful to a certain extent. But what's happening right now in awakening is that we're accessing our greater capacity to heal more directly, to heal more thoroughly, to heal at the origin point, not in dealing with the symptoms. So just understanding that when we're coming into this quiet state, we're aiming here to have the healing at the origin point. That alone is a healing incitement within. And I actually, in my latest book, and I know we'll talk about that in a minute, in my latest book, there's several different chapters on tips to manage the awakening process. And that includes the exploration of all of these painful things and different ways to allow them the freedom to be healed in ways that are very different than previously.
Yeah, and we were talking about having you come back to do a second conversation just about the awakening process and the things that can happen. I just wanted to mention that so people can be aware to watch for that second interview. But
Yeah,
were you shown in your experience what the cause of this block was, this fundamental block? Is that a natural byproduct of us incarnating into physical bodies that feel separate? Or is it caused in some way by our reaction to this experience?
yes, I have been shown this, and I've been shown this several times in different ways. And in my experience, um, it was an innocent, this wasn't some grand plan of let's go see how much we can learn in a really hard kind of way. Let's go struggle and see what we figure out. That wasn't my experience at all. In my experience, in our initial explorations of being, so I should just preface this by saying I've had the experience of going into the primordial ground of the God state. And what I experience God as is just a cherishing awareness, a dynamic, cherishing awareness. And the impulse of existence that is driven by the expression of God is simply a desire to be aware of and cherish all there is to be aware of and cherish. So God is this loving nature, this cherishing nature that seeks all kinds of expressions and experiences, and that's how existence is. That's my own experience of it. But in that exploration of all there is to be aware of and cherish, we're going through these different iterations of what happens with this pattern of movement and that pattern of movement and that pattern of movement. And then we came into a pattern of fear, a pattern of fear. And when we think about, it's very simple to understand how this can be the origin. When we remember that fear is afraid, that's its nature, is to be afraid. So it doesn't unite. It's not the thing that's enjoying the unitive state of exploration. As soon as we come into a pattern of fear, it's a thing that recoils. It's a thing that goes, "Oh, no, no, I can't, mm-mm." And in that recoiling was separation. That was the initial separation, and then we just inverted and went through this whole avenue of exploration through fear. So fear created its own world, and it's a very dense. I know you've had many people talk about, I love Christian Sundberg's definition of when we come into a
Yes.
human experience and we're like dialing down our frequency. That's exactly right. When you think about what fear did when we're exploring in all this really, really high frequency unitive experience, and then it comes into its recoiling, it's just dialing, it's losing all of its fuel, its energy. So it has to create in a very, very dense way. And this is what we've been experiencing. In my experience, we didn't mean for it to be so hard and cruel and all of these kinds of things. It's just an exploration that just kept going and going and going and getting more complicated and more painful and whatever. And now awareness has come around, humanity has come around to this realization that we're done with that level of really struggling exploration. And now we're ready to heal. So now we get to learn compassion in a new and deeper way as well.
Where do you see us going collectively from here? Do you think that we will be able to rise to this challenge and heal and
Oh,
move
I think
in?
we're already rising and
Yeah.
I think we can just look at our world today and look at all the things that, I mean, look at what's happening in the world today that is centered around more equality, more acceptance, more truth telling, more union, more collaborate, like everything that are the divine qualities, we're beginning to experience more and more and more. And at the same time, there's kind of a backlash of, the sector that isn't awakening yet really having some reaction to that. But I'll tell you that in my experiences, everything that I've been shown about where we're going is not so much about what we're going to be coming into as much as what we're coming out of. So, for example, this I have in one of my books, Humanity's Epic Awakening. The last part of that book is talking about all that I've been shown about where we're going, and every chapter is on the things that are ending, and it's like the end of hell, the end of separation consciousness, the end of the conquering game, the end of opposing sides, the end of this, the end of this, the end of this. I've seen how the endings play out. And then what's available is life that we haven't experienced yet. It's all new potential that's rising up and available. We're available to that now. But we're available to that because we've shed all of that weight, all of that, those filters and those limitations that kept us in a struggling paradigm of life. So we come out of the good trumps bad paradigm of life, and we come into a much more unitive, collaborative, celebratory way of exploring our greater potential. And that includes all of the multidimensional capacities that are coming online big time now. which you explore many in your guests here.
Yes, yes. Well, Mary, thank you so much for reaching out and being willing to have this conversation. I look forward to part two. I would like to give you a chance to share about your books and anything else you have going on.
Well, thank you. First of all, Melissa, thank you. I really appreciate this. I really adore your work and your contribution. Speaking of contribution, you have such a powerful ripple effect. So thank you, and I appreciate getting to be part of that. So I'm the author of 4 books. The first is the story of how I went from being a healthcare executive in Washington, D.C. to living in a Buddhist nunnery in the Himalayas, and really owning and stepping into that level of self-acceptance as a mystic. That's Unwitting Mystic. Second is a text of channeled teachings. Right after the pandemic began, I just suddenly started channeling a huge collective. And so the second book, Divine New Being, is all the texts from those teachings. The third book is really sort of the collective humanity story, humanity's epic awakening. And I use a bunch of my metaphysical experiences to show where we've been, where we are now. It's so exciting, and then where we're going. And then my latest book is this, Navigating the Wondrous Holy Shit Show of Awakening, which is talking about all the things that we don't necessarily want to talk about. We like to talk about all the nice parts, but there's a lot of confusion. And so this is a guidebook for individuals and practitioners and leaders and media that are sort of exploring the subject of awakening.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to dive into in our next conversation.
Yes.
So, Mary, again, thank you so much. I've really enjoyed listening and learning from you today.
Thank you.
I wish you great success with all of your contributions as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching and listening. Your views, likes, comments, and shares truly make the biggest difference in supporting this channel. Don't forget to check the show notes for all the links to today's guest, as well as my links. You'll find me on social media at Love Covered Life, my website, lovecoveredlife.com, and the Be a Guest link for anybody who would like to be a guest on the channel. I have great news. Love Covered Life podcast is coming available on audio podcast. You can find it wherever you listen to your audio podcasts.